It energizes my soul at its very core to be here with so many like-minded people that see the truth, that have researched the truth, and are defending the very soul of humanity against the parasitic controllers of this world government who are orchestrating terror attacks as a pretext to sell us into even greater slavery. So I want to commend all of you for making the journey, many of you from other countries, I was told 4 continents, here to Chicago, the Windy City. This is really exciting and historical, so God bless you. I don't normally do PowerPoint presentations. You can tell somebody had already got it out of order here. But I thought it'd be better to try to, at least for part of this hour-long speech, go through some of the evidence calmly, succinctly, and then, of course, deliver some of the customary fire to the debate, because nothing is more important than our liberty. That's every man, woman, and child of you controlling your own destiny. And government-sponsored terrorism is about one thing, and that's a pretext of control and domination of free humanity. There is 6.5 billion of us, and the Dr. Piancas and the Henry Kissingers and the Peter Singers can openly state that they plan to build a world government to then orderly have a worldwide one-child policy and exterminate us. If they think they're going to get away with declaring war on humanity, they got another thing coming. Humans are the dominant species on this planet because we are aggressive, we are dynamic, we are creative. And the elite is afraid of that human spirit. They are threatened by ingenuity. They are threatened by independence. They are threatened by you controlling your own destiny. They are afraid of the engines of creativity that your minds and souls are. So they try to sell you on the pap and the ball games and the sex and the mindless issues that'll never feed your soul like the truth will. There's nothing better. There's nothing more powerful. There's nothing that feels better in your bones than knowing the truth and being independent and not trusting your government and being involved. And that's why you're here tonight. So let's go ahead and go through just a brief history encapsulated of government-sponsored terrorism. I don't claim to be a historian. I mean, scholarly professors, great minds, will spend their entire lives, our meager short lives, studying just one facet, one slice of one region of the world, and still won't know everything that happened, everything that transpired, the thousands, the millions of lives, everything they did, the good, the bad, and the ugly, the evil, the heroes, the average person. But I have always found that history, when I was a young man, was more entertaining than television. This is real. This really happened. Why should I read a Tom Clancy fiction book when I can read something that's real, a declassified CIA document? Why should I do that? But I've read The Rise and Fall of the Roman Republic. I've read quite a few books, probably not more than 20 or 30, on Rome itself. That's not that many, actually. And I had seen over and over again, it was admitted that the first fire departments, don't get me wrong, I love firefighters today. They do a great job. They're some of the few public servants we've got left in government. They really are wonderful men and women. But Julius Caesar's grandfather and others controlled these firefighting guilds. And what they would do is they would go around and demand protection money from people in Rome, the different minorities in Rome, that, hey, if you don't pay us to be your fire department, when a fire comes that we're going to set, we're not going to come put it out, or we're going to come set one if you don't. And there are earlier examples of government-sponsored terrorism, but I think this example from 2,100 years ago is a good place to start. I mean, you don't think the Italian mafia 120 years ago in New York City or Chicago or Houston for that matter, you don't think they just thought up the idea of pay me protection money or I'm going to burn down your grocery store. No, this is very, very old, and the money that was garnered from this later put the grandson, Julius Caesar, into the dictatorship of Rome, and then we saw the 400-year decline of it until the sacking in 410 by Alaric. Now let's skip forward 2,000 years to a fascist with the Roman salute. Sure, CNN will probably use that out of context. Hitler and the Reichstag, but then I get to sue them, so that's even better. See? It's all been pre-planned. Hitler and the Reichstag fire. Now, this is part of the record. If you really read the histories, you read the Nazi documents, it's there, Heinz Hobel's Order of the Death's Head, others. It is part of the record that, and it's the same story, it's just like 9/11. They always find somebody with a 70, 75 IQ. Maybe he knows the name of their mommy. That's about it. And they grabbed Marinus van der Lubbe, the Reichstag on April 27th, 1933, a few months after Hitler was elected president. He wasn't chancellor, then he abolished that and became Fuhrer later. He'd only gotten a parliamentary representation of about 38, depending on the region, 40%. So he gets in, he goes in, and Hermann Goering was there, and they firebombed it and doused gasoline all over. It was simultaneous big fire. And they said, this is our excuse to now take over the entire society, set up Reich security, which translates into home security, land security, Reich's land security. And of course, they had little confidants in the U.S. running their banks, Brown Brother and Harriman's, you know it as Prescott Bush. But that's another time, another talk. And they grabbed Marinus van der Lubbe, who wasn't just mentally retarded, he was also mentally ill, rolling around naked. They obviously drugged him in the back of the Reichstag. And then they cut his head off just a few months later after a show trial. And Hitler used the burning of the Reichstag to bring in his police state, to take the regional Bavarian police and turn them into the national police or the black shirts. And government agents should note that then tens of thousands of the brown shirts, like Ernst Röhm and others, were killed in the long knives that came up very soon thereafter. So here is a 20th century example of government-sponsored terrorism for you on the record. Hitler didn't stop there. Gleiwitz, the town of Gleiwitz, little German radio, military, army relay station, and they dressed up a Jewish concentration camp victim. They marched him out, dressed him up in a Polish uniform, blew his head off. They had newsreels all there, and they said, they attacked our radio station, and they caused all this carnage, and it's absolutely terrible, so we're going to invade Poland. When they teach people in high school or college or on TV, and then this is totally admitted, that, oh, Hitler just invaded Poland. No, he had to convince the Germans that they had been premeditatedly attacked by the 19th century horses and cavalrymen of the Polish army. So they blitzkrieged in, they smashed it, crushed Warsaw, and of course they divided it with the Nazi-Soviet pact with Stalin. Two scumbags later turned on each other, thank God. So there's another example of Gleiwitz. Now we move forward to a U.S. government/British operation, and that is 1953, the overthrow of the democratically elected Mohammad Mossadegh. Mohammad Mossadegh was a poet. He was a liberal by every yardstick. He was anti-Soviet. He helped drive them out of the north. And he told BP, that had been dominating this country, he said, you can keep 80% of the money. But my people are starving. We were once a very advanced culture. We've been dominated by you. We're going to build schools. We're going to become first world. We're going to keep 20% of that money, kind of like Hugo Chavez is doing right now. And they said, the hell you are. And so they hired Kermit Roosevelt. And Kermit Roosevelt was the grandson of Teddy Roosevelt. And as CIA section chief, they sent him in with Norman Schwarzkopf's father. Same people, runs in families, as a speaker said earlier today at the press conference. And they went in, and you can go to CIA.gov. You can go to the New York Times. This is all my new film, Terror Storm. It's coming out in a month. I'm going to premiere it at my big LA conference. And they came in there, and they bombed mosques, killed Muslim leaders, clerics. They handed out tens of thousands in every city, millions total, just him and a 12-man team and a few $1 million. These handbills saying, Mossadegh did this, he's very proud of it, as if Mossadegh had written it, up with communism, up with the terrorism, up with the attack on Islam. And they used that then to use the military that already paid off to go to his to go to the presidential palace and to arrest Mossadegh, who was in prison for 3 years and then spent the rest of his life on home arrest. But they took his entire cabinet and tried them and cut their heads off too. They got the same fate as Marinus van der Lubbe under Adolf Alois Hitler. Now, let's skip forward to 1961 and Operation Northwoods, the official U.S. government plan, not some war game, an official green-lighted plan they wanted to go operational with. That means they wanted to do it. To use a modern analogy, it's like you're signing the contract to buy the house. As if you're looking at houses. And it called for hijacking jets by remote control, crashing them, blaming it on the Soviets, Cuba. It called for bombing D.C. It called for sniper attacks, even how to frame patsies. It called for attacking the Marine Corps base at Guantanamo Bay, Cuba, and then having Cuban American Army troops dressed up like Cubans do it as a pretext to start World War III. That's Library of Congress, National Security Archive, ABC News. That is part of the record as well. And they hope that you don't investigate this. They hope you don't look at this. They hope, and obviously you have, but they hope that the people out there who haven't looked yet haven't. Because once you start learning of this, you can't turn away. It's the truth. It's the foundation on which our entire society's development is being built. They have hijacked human development. They're using false flag terror to do this. Now we skip forward a few years, 2 years, year and a half, to Gulf of Tonkin, 1964. We've already got 150,000 troops there. We've already had 6,000 losses covertly in the last 4 years. I say we, the New World Order, we're not really part of this system. We have to get out of that mindset, myself included. And this criminal group, led by McNamara and led by LBJ, Lyndon Baines Johnson, we knew this 40 years ago. Some captains and others went public. It was in the San Diego Tribune, Herald Tribune, way back in '64, some people spoke out and said, we weren't attacked. We were told to go up there. We were trying to draw fire. They wouldn't shoot at us, so we shot at them, and none of this happened. We already knew that. But in the last 2 years, the LBJ tapes have been released, 3,000 hours of them in Austin by the Presidential Library. And to hear these tapes I put on the radio of LBJ at his ranch to McNamara in D.C. going, well, so we staged this. Oh, this is how we handle it with the press. And McNamara's telling him what to do. Then it gets worse. About 8 months ago, I guess, they released the actual NSA documents and the CIA documents that indeed it was a false provocation for war. People say, well, nobody died via that lie. I mean, they didn't actually blow up a building or sink a ship as Northwoods called for. Northwoods also had blowing up a ship like the Maine again in 1898 with William McKinley's Navy. They say, no, we haven't killed anybody. It wasn't a problem. 58,000 Americans died. Over 1 million Vietnamese died up until 1974, 75 with a full pullout. So, yes, millions did die. So, this is the reality. This is their main game plan. They know we're tribal, primitive creatures, and if we're like a beehive, if somebody whacks the beehive, we're going to come buzzing out of there angrily to resist this. And that's what they do. They misdirect us. In fact, they have, of course, African-style hunting, but all primitive societies do it. The Queen of England does it. They have beaters who take drums, pots, and pans, and they get off a few miles away and begin beating these drums, beating these pots and pans, and driving the pheasants or the other birds that are being shot towards the area where the nobles are lined up with their shotguns. And then the nobles just sit there with 3 or 4 servants each, handing them double-barrel shotguns as they shoot the game birds as they come flying out of the tree line. Humans learned this a long time ago. That's why woolly mammoths are extinct all across Eurasia and what's Europe today, and of course the Americas, because humans learned to beat their drums, drive them off cliffs. And we are an incredibly aggressive predatory species, so now we've dominated all the animals, so the elites sit upon us as kind of our own little degenerate subspecies, feeding on the general population, still engaging in those predatory instincts, and they see us as weak-minded because we're not predatory like they are. And of course, Africans do the same thing. They beat the bushes. Some of the southern tribesmen, they have these long 14-foot spears, and they beat the bushes for several miles and drive the lions out. And it's part of a manhood ritual to then go out and kill the lion. It's the same thing. So terrorism is beating the bushes, scaring you, driving you, the lemmings off the cliff, driving you in the direction that they're sending the sound, the propaganda. So from an anthropological view, that's what we're dealing with here. And another case of that with the Gulf of Tonkin. Then we have the sinking of the USS Liberty, and I've researched this. I've interviewed many of the JAG officers involved, like Captain Ward Boston, who later became Admiral Boston. They were told to cover it up. They had the full details of what happened. I've interviewed the now late Chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, Admiral Thomas M. Moore. I have also, of course, interviewed many of the other admirals that were involved there. And I've talked to the admirals, Admiral Geist, who's now late as well, many years ago. But it's on the record. They filed public reports. They've delivered these to Congress that LBJ, well, I'm sure most of you know about the USS Liberty, but for those watching in TV land, let me boil that down. 1967, Six-Day War. You've got the, 6-7 Arab nations attacking Israel. And Israel's already basically won 5 days into it, okay, with superior weapons. And so all this is happening, and we know that at that time the Soviets were supplying armaments to the Arabs, and so the Cold War planners wanted to knock it up because World War III would be really profitable, especially when they rotate out as generals to being defense contractor CEOs and board members. And they wanted to go to war with the Soviets. The prize wasn't just Egypt and that populous nation in the region. So this is the neocon plan back then. They just weren't called neocons. And so LBJ took specific special control through his office in McNamara, and they parked the USS Liberty right there in the Mediterranean, 14 miles off the northern coast of Israel / Egypt. And they sent in multiple waves of Descent Missouri fighter bombers. They sent in Mirage 3s, two wings of those. They attacked it for several hours. They had torpedo boats. You know, one case blowing in my new film, I say 35-foot hole. I've got to go recut it. It's actually a 47-foot hole. I'm sorry. They blow it through there. The captain's got a life vest on, strapping his intestines in, delivering morphine to himself, staying at the bridge. And they call the carrier, Admiral Geist, we're under attack, because the first thing the Israelis did was shoot up all the antennas and all the control systems. And they had unmarked planes, precision type activities, unmarked aircraft. So all of this happens, and they call Geist, help us, we're under attack, we're being engaged by torpedo boats and bombers and fighters, and we need your help. And they're locking down bulkheads, and it's burning, and people are dying, and they're strafing lifeboats against the Geneva Convention and all rules of war and common sense and decency. Because they had to kill everybody. And McNamara comes on and says, you will not launch a wing, we're not going to do that. And the Admiral ignores it, and they go ahead and launch the wings. They're not calling them back, they've been launched. And then all of a sudden, over the radio line comes the telephone call, patched in, it's the President. I want that goddamn ship going to the bottom. That's a quote. I want that goddamn ship going to the bottom. So if you think the government cares about any of you, these are their military, these are their servants. The Russian trawling ship, spy ship, pulls up. It's witnessing the commando troops coming in on the helicopters now. The commandos are coming in. They're coming in to kill everybody. They're going to put special forces on the boat. They're going to kill everybody. And they see the Russians. The Russians are filming all of this. They back off. They fly off. And they come. But still the carriers don't help them. The ship has to limp. They're hoping it sinks. Oh, if it gets to be night, we can still send the commandos in. We're not going to help them yet. Maybe we can still kill them. And so that happens. And I don't even blame Israel for this. Obviously, Israel's a client state of the globalists, like most other Western nations. People who say it's just Israel, and there's certainly a party to it, just like a street soldier on the ground takes an order from a Don, who gives an order to a capo, who gives it to the street thug to carry out a murder, to carry out a robbery. But we know from the admirals, LBJ had control of that ship and was trying to sink it, which was in Operation Northwoods. And then they could have said, those dirty Arabs, they killed our men. They were just out there fighting for America, doing what they had to for this country. And they could have moved in to the entire Middle East, and that was the plan. And we now have those declassified battle plans. And if the Soviets would have resisted, they were going to send in the cruise missiles, the nuclear cruise missiles. They were going to send in the bombers. They were going to kill most of that population. I'm not saying we'll get our hair mussed, kind of like they say in Dr. Strangelove. I mean, that's the type of craziness that we're dealing with these individuals. Now, Skipping forward to the Oklahoma City bombing, April 19th, 1995 at 9:01 a.m., we have a truck bomb detonate, and it blows the facade off the building, and then it blows pillars further away in the back of the building out, and we all get news videotape of this, and they're perfectly blasted off. I think we've seen this before, or seen this later, Back to the Future. They're blasting off the columns. They're destroying them. And suddenly the governor goes, yeah, the police found bombs. The police say they found bombs. I've interviewed police officers, FBI agents, others who saw the bombs, plastic explosive, jacketing these columns. They remove it. Then the local police are good folks. They're saying, yeah, we got reports that he was with Arabs. This was going on. This was happening. John Doe number 2, these other people, they were at this hotel. We have surveillance tapes. Government says national security. We're not releasing those 12 surveillance camera tapes, which FBI agents have told the LA Times and myself. They saw it, and it's McVeigh with Arabs. He gets out with one of them. We even know his name, Al Hussein. He gets out. They go out and meet with some other Arabs and drive off. You're going, well, Arabs attacked us. No, they didn't, ladies and gentlemen. Remember, Saddam is our ally, America's ally, the globalist ally. People have hijacked America's ally as their engine of control. From the time he gets into power in a CIA staged coup in 1979, they staged his ascendance to Bath security chief in 69. He was their assassin back in the early 50s. They hired him, trained him in Egypt for 2 years in assassination. He killed all these people. He was a big strapping killer. And they said, we'll quit killing all of you. And he was personally killing people. He was like, keep using the Italian mob analogy. He was like Luca Brasi. And so they tell him, you put him in as security chief, 69, we'll leave you alone. This is all British intelligence. And because they make all the decisions that we implement them, we're their muscle. They've always run this country. And then from there, he gets into power in 79, and within 2 years, there's this massive $30-something billion U.S.-funded attack on Iran. And 1.5 million Iranians died conservatively up against, high-tech weapons, and Saddam's this big darling. And then along comes 1990, and April Gillespie's sitting there, you've all probably seen the tape, and he says, I'm going to attack Kuwait, they're stealing my oil. And she goes, we're allies with you. We don't get involved in inter-Arab affairs. And he thinks, well, I'm getting another order to attack somebody. So he does it. And then Bush gets on TV. Bush Sr. starts calling him the sodomizer. His name is Saddam Hussein. They start calling him Sodom. Sodom and Gomorrah. He's Saddam Hussein. Now he can't. Now he's going to be overthrown if he doesn't. And he's going, he starts saying, well, I was told to do this. Then we have PR firms saying they were throwing babies out of incubators and all this. Just like they claimed Iran wants to make Jews wear yellow stars and Christians blue tags. All made up. Same thing, same people. That comes out. All this happens. And so we fast forward to the Oklahoma City bombing. There were all these Iraqis trained in the 80s here in the U.S., trained at the different military schools in demolition and torture, School of Americas, all these places. It's on the record. So the war ends. They go into southern Iraq. They Bush Sr. brings in like 3,200 Iraqi Republican Guard officers. And then Clinton brings in roughly 2,000 more. This is LA Times, Washington Post, Washington Times. Have them all on the website. It's in Road to Tyranny. So they bring them in to the country. They're now here. And they're all over. In fact, Chicago's one of the big cities. I'm told, got a couple 100-man team here ready to burn this baby down. Think about that. They got them in Austin. They got them in Houston. For some reason, they're mainly in the central area. It's like that's their responsibility for my intel. They got small teams. You know what special forces teams can do to your city? And these guys are highly paid. They got their mistresses and their Jaguars and their $1 million houses. And they're all just waiting. This big joke to them to kill a whole bunch of us. That's why I'm here fighting them. I'm not going to put up with it. So they bring McVeigh, who when the state police found him was all drugged out, stumbling around, saying weird things, foaming at the mouth, literally. And then that's their passing, just like Lee Harvey Oswald, like all these people. It's the same MO, Marinus Vanderloo, poor retarded guy, naked rolling around. They're always rolling around drugged out. So it's and he did it. It's all his fault. And so that's what happened with Oklahoma City. And they used that to pass the omnibus crime bill, which federalized a lot of our police. It funded all these black Darth Vader outfits you've seen that have been given to your local police departments. And they're all strutting around and stomping around. That's a federal legislation. The cameras that said were for traffic, and the microphones that were gunshot detectors, and now they mention, no, it's to surveil you. No, it's for your safety, but the border stays open. So all of this is going on. And there's so much evidence in Oklahoma. I could talk for 5 hours on it, not even scratch the surface. I mean, BATF shows up in bomb gear 30 seconds after the bomb. Stuff takes 20 minutes to put on. Local cops talk to them who I've interviewed before they kill them. And they're sitting there, Cop of the Year, Terrence Yakey and others, and they're going, well, what's going on here? You guys are all, we got a call not to come in. I mean, I could digress back to the first World Trade Center bombing in 1993, where the FBI on the record, it's hidden in plain sight, hidden in plain view, cooked the bomb, trained the driver, again, hired 2 guys who were on New York welfare for being retarded. Same story. You go to a place with a blind sheet, can't see who you are. He's sitting there above the pizza place with about 30 members, going like, poor guy, he doesn't know what's going on. They're creeping around. They find 2 guys who are on subsidy for being retarded, and they go and they get them, and then they tell them it's the jihad for Allah, this holy fight, and they cooked the bomb and trained the driver, and the FBI even went with their informant and showed them where to park it. You park it right up against this column. Thank God they didn't, or it could have caused a lot more problems. So all of this happens. All of this is going on. And they're getting ready to do it again in America, and we need to put it on the record that it's happening. Now, before I get into 9/11, which is why you're here tonight, I want to talk about Iraq briefly, because its story is critical to understanding. So we've covered the past, just a skimming of it, because there's so much evidence, so many other cases. And now we're going to skip 9/11 and go to post 9/11. They invade Afghanistan. The only Taliban they arrest are people that were calling and in newspapers going, we hear there's going to be a big attack on your country. We'd like to help you arrest bin Laden. We hear he's your agent. All the others that get captured by troops are released. But skipping forward to the White House memo. This came out about 6-7 months ago. It's much bigger than the Downing Street memo, where their foreign secretary and others come back and say, we've got to fix intelligence, these are quotes, around the war strategy. They're going to invade in March of 2003. We've got to fix the intelligence. We know there's not evidence, but we've got to manufacture it. That's nothing compared to the White House memo. The White House memo, which they confirm is authentic and they want to arrest whoever released it from the British government, is the minutes of Tony Blair and George W. Bush on your screen. And you can read this, these discussions and these excerpts, and they're just sitting there pleased as pie. Oh, we could paint up an American plane like a UN plane and fly it low and try to get them to shoot it down, the Iraqis. And we got defectors who can claim they found WMDs. And right here is the Times of London. Bush tried to lure Saddam into war using UN aircraft. Then you read down in here deeper, and it talks about staging the WMD discoveries. Bush tried to lure Saddam into war using UN aircraft. Think about that. And that just sits out there in plain view for everyone. It's admitted, just like they bombed the World Trade Center in 93. Just like they overthrew Mossadegh. You go to the CIA's website, and they brag about it. It's the after-action reports. With Mossadegh, to 10 Downing Street, Kermit Roosevelt first called his report to 10 Downing Street. And he's, your graciousness, you ought to go read this. I have done great work for you. I recommend we carry out terror attacks everywhere. Read it. This works so well. And they did. 50-plus countries in the next 30 years after that. Now they're getting bigger. It's bigger events. We've got to kill more of them to get their attention. And then he writes a letter to Eisenhower. Oh, you're president. Oh, this is wonderful. I did a great job for you. So this is what they're doing. It's all right there for everyone. And it's up to us to go and show people the facts. A lot of them won't listen until things get really bad. Why do they want a police state? One-child policies, total tracking control, national sales tax, harnessing America as an engine, as a warmock, as a juggernaut to invade 60-plus countries as part of the Pentagon's new map and the PNAC program. We are to be the modern Hessian engine to supply propaganda to the world and troops, mainly supplied from Latin America. It's unbelievable. And another key facet of Iraq is P2OG. And you can find the headlines, UPI, AP, Asia Times, on this particular document. It came out right after the war started, that they had a $6 billion a year program. That's pretty big, $6 billion. And that, well, the headline was, Pentagon planned to stimulate terror attacks. And it says in there, if we kill people's families, they'll attack us. And if we do covert killings all over the world, people get mad and attack us, then we can widen the war. If we go around killing people's families we don't like, then they're going to come kill some of our people, and then we can invade them. And it's just, again, like everything else, just, well, let's admit it, sure. Yeah, we're stimulating terrorist attacks. Now let's get into 9/11 and the smoking guns. Let me tell you something. If you think 9/11 was spectacular, if you think people jumping out of buildings to their deaths was cinematic, because these bastards do, you ain't seen nothing yet. And so really I'm here, so after they pull the next one, we have a small chance of stopping them. These guys are so arrogant, though, they don't know when to stop. That's why tyrants throughout history have always fallen. Yeah! There you go! So when they carry out their next bigot, we need to be all there, lined up, showing the motive, the means. We need to be laying out how they did it. We need to be there analyzing from moment one when a major U.S. city vaporizes. When a European city has some new super germ released in it. Now again, I'm not saying this has to happen. And I don't get up here with shallow claims. I do my research. I work 18 hours a day. And I mean I do. I live analyzing the data. I live talking to all the experts. I live immersed in this because I know it's about survival of my family. And hence, if my family's going to be free, you got to be free. That's why I do what I do. I realize every day we're on the edge of total enslavement. We're on the edge of death. We're on the edge of losing our destinies to control our own lives, which is worse than death. And I will not relinquish my soul to these murdering scumbags. Again, we could spend hours and hours. I've done whole weeks where I didn't take calls years ago, where I just covered smoking guns of 9/11. No calls, 3 hours a day. Some of you probably heard those shows. Constantly, 45 minutes an hour. They're covering 9/11, going over all of it. I mean, one must look at 9/11 in the full spectrum of history and the elites, but then at just the evidence of 9/11, it's an orgy of evidence. It's sloppily done. People say they couldn't get away with this. People find out. People talk. Yes, we did find out. We are talking. There's whistleblowers everywhere. These heroes like Dr. Morgan Reynolds and like Dr. Stephen Jones right here with us tonight. And so many others. Ray McGovern is going to be at my conference in L.A. And we have to look at the courage of these men and women. We need to support them. We need to stand up for what they've done because they're putting a lot on the line. You know, I talked to Ray on air a few days ago. Ray McGovern, senior CIA analyst for 27 years for Reagan and Bush Sr. And he admitted on air that they're already threatening his pension. And off air, he said even more. Can you imagine, your pension, what you live on, what you fund your, hey, shut up or you're not going to get your money. See, but there's more evidence of this criminal government. They're trying to intimidate us. And later I'll get into the stuff that Charlie Sheen's gone through. Total manufactured bull. So, I'm going to briefly talk about 9/11 because I want to get into some of the solutions and some of the other issues before us and some of the major things that we as a civilization, as a species, face. Smoking guns of 9/11. The Bush-Bin Laden connection. Oh, man. It's like asking me to go to a Chinese buffet and eat every platter there. I mean, how do you cover all this? How many of you have seen Lawrence of Arabia? It's a classic flick. That's a true story. The British, turn of the last century, oil's been discovered in the U.S. Rockefellers are making a lot of money off this, as good Rothschild agents. And they say, what are we going to do? We got to get control of this oil. We're finding this stuff coming out, basically refined out of the ground. There's a bunch of desert tribes over there. We'll go back up certain tribes to go around and kill the other tribes, and we'll create the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia, the Royal House of Saud, from this one Bedouin tribe. We'll go do this in Iraq. We'll break Iraq up. We'll put troops in it. We'll send troops into Pakistan. They sent them into the whole place. And if you go research it, the bin Ladens are the third richest family in Saudi Arabia conservatively. They build all U.S. constructions in the Middle East. They are the go-to guys. They air-conditioned Mecca. They are the boys. They make tens of billions of dollars a year. Their wealth is unknown. They're one of the largest owners of Carlyle Group, one of the big brokerage groups that they don't really make anything. They just trade and engage in influence peddling and weapons deals. And the bin Ladens, going back about 80, 90 years, were British intelligence. Admittedly, just like Schwarzkopf and others that came later, just like President Teddy Roosevelt's grandson, Kermit. And they go in there and they have bin Laden. So these aren't some Johnny-come-latelys. This is all about hereditary. This is trusted family. This is good people for the New World Order. Close. And it's this whole history of them doing horrible things. I mean, just skipping forward, about the Bushes, and about Arbusto Oil and Harkin Energy and James Bath and the money deals and the airports and bin Laden being Tim Osmond and being CIA and being here in the United States. Most of you have heard about that. You've read about that. You've researched that. And we know about $6 billion given to, quote, Al-Qaeda when they were fighting the Soviets. And Brzezinski brags that they actually went in '79 when Carter was leaving and set this up and had them attack the Soviets. So when the Soviets came in, it'd be a trap. They admit all this. But it didn't end there. When they invaded the Balkans in the late 90s, there's a Senate report, Alphonse D'Amato even put it out, admitting that they sent bin Laden himself, this incredible CIA officer, red, white, and blue. They sent him in with $45 million of weapons, and they start doing the Gladio thing again. They start blowing up school buses. It's the favorite. You kill the human tribe's children, they go nuts. You get the beehive really going. All reason is out the window. And Milosevic, who's not a perfect person by any measure, but compared to the New World Order, give me a break. He comes down into Kosovo, which would be like the southwest of America, and he comes in and he says, look, we want all the Albanians to stay. It's just we're going to get these fighters out of here. And they send Hillary Clinton and the rest of them, and they stand there showing fences there in Albania and fences in Macedonia. They go, look at the barbed wire fences, keeping them in camps. No, that's our fences keeping them out from escaping. And then our government, admittedly, NATO captains have gone public who were ordered to bomb civilians. They would bomb convoys of the refugees, then blame it on Milosevic. On record, mainstream British news, mainstream French news, admitted Spanish news. So all of this goes on. Bin Laden is a globalist New World Order puppet. And from my intel, from multiple CFR, CIA, and defense intelligence sources, he died of kidney failure probably a week before 9/11. And you've seen more of these phony video productions. They're as fake as a $3 bill. That, like I said, they can show you Forrest Gump shaking hands with JFK. It isn't real, folks. And they've done voice print on those tapes. It's not him. And it's almost like a joke with the gold ring and all the stuff. They don't do that. The Project for a New American Century. More evidence of 9/11. I mean, criminals love to brag. A good investigator, a good cop will tell you, these guys love to brag. That's why somebody might rob a bank and 10 years later, they shoot their mouth off and get busted. Cops go knock the wall in. There's some of the marked notes still on the wall. So criminals love to brag. These guys are into this. It's funny to them. They sit around drinking about how dumb we are, what idiots we are, how funny it is. I've talked to people, high level, who've been in some of these meetings concerning other government crime. It's funny. It's entertaining. They love it. The Project for a New American Century. I mean, there's hundreds of these documents. I don't know how many I've read. I've spent hours and hours and hours reading them. But September 20th, 2000, Rebuilding America's Defenses, that's the one that gets the most attention. but nobody seems to read what's in it. Michael Meacher did. Forget all the stuff about Iraq and we need a new Pearl Harbor and we need to do all this. Dick Cheney says we need to use race-specific bioweapons to kill certain races. What? I mean, can you imagine me writing that or you writing that, putting it on the website? Hey, we need to kill the brown people. And this guy runs a country. A year later, he's running a country. Oh, let's not worry about that. He just says, I mean, that's the arrogance of these people. We'll get to more of that later. We need to engineer race-specific bioweapons and legitimize their use with our friends in the media. That's a quote. Legitimize the use of race-specific bioweapons. Man, that is just special. And then we have the Afghan war plans, MSNBC, Associated Press, Times of London. 2 days before the attack, you see the headline, it says 1 day before. It was actually 2 days before if you read deeper. They had the launch orders for the full invasion that had been in preparation for 6 months before. I mean, you don't just invade countries and have carriers and weapons lined up. And it's admitted, 6 months before the globalists carry out 9/11, they lined their troops up, Tajikistan, Uzbekistan, other areas, Turkey, other places, Saudi Arabia, for the invasion. 2 carrier groups, all of them are just sitting there waiting. They did it. And so that's the Afghan war plans. They are quintessential in seeing how these criminals operate. Then we have the NORAD stand down. The NORAD stand down. And I like to focus on the issues we can prove. The controlled demolition, NORAD stand down, CIA drills, Tripod 2, public officials warned not to fly, the impossibility of 19 hijackers carrying these attacks out. Those are the things that the media can't play little games with. Whether the other issues are real or not, they can't debate this whole cornucopia of issues we're about to go through. NORAD stood down. We got all the tapes, the ones they didn't shred. And it's like, is this part of that drill? Because I see a building smoking. I mean, is this part of that drill? They had all these different war games going on of drilling for planes flying into buildings on the East Coast. Specifically listed in the roster of buildings it could be was CIA headquarters, Capitol, World Trade Center, Pentagon, Camp David. And so all this is going on. The average guy in the military, woman in the military, they're good people. They're just like, I got 20 bogeys on my screen. That's the number. What are real, what aren't? Bush had to be in that classroom waiting because they could have said, well, wait, you were in a command position. Oh, no, he didn't know. So they had to keep it going longer. So he had to be in a position where he was sequestered, so he couldn't go out and order the shoot down because since 1957, the admirals and the generals and even the designate colonels, when the generals are asleep at night, are ordered by default, automatically to launch fighter interceptors and fire Sidewinder missiles into the targets when they're going into a populated area. Payne Stewart, you know the case. But in June 1st of 2001, they took the control away from the admirals and away from the generals just to Dick Cheney. You can type down, what's the exact headline to find it in a Google search? NORAD stand down order found. And then the link from the people's sites that wrote about this and discovered it will go to the Defense Department. You can go read it there. So it's all there for the people to see. The evidence is irrefutable. It is legion. I personally think this is the smoking gun. I mean, if I go out and order somebody or hire somebody to commit a murder, and they can clearly show the murderer worked for me and was paid by me, then I've got a conviction right there. And we know these hijackers. I've interviewed 2 embassy heads, first to interview them, then it was in major papers, 2 embassy heads in Canada and in Saudi Arabia who, the so-called Al-Qaeda hijackers on your screen, they were on terrorist watch lists. They were on terrorist watch lists. But they got red flagged on the computer, and so like, we're not going to let these guys in. And then a day later they get a call, and it's a CIA section sheet. These are government agents, part of a high-level anti-terror training operation. You are to let them proceed. And then they get back, and this is whenever they're going to their, quote, Al-Qaeda recruiting meetings in Malaysia or Saudi Arabia or wherever they're going. creating this ledger, this false history. The so-called hijackers think that they're government agents testing the security system, just like Special Forces or Navy SEALs will practice raiding government buildings or embassies. This is a live. I'm sure you've heard about the TSA tries to sneak a bomb through the airport. They were hired for this. Then they come to the U.S. and they're trained at the Defense Language School in Monterey, California. And the head of the Defense Language School, the dean of the school, the vice chancellor, headline, this is out of the San Jose Mercury News, was also picked up by Reuters. The headline here is Defense Language Institute Vice Chancellor Bush made it happen to get terror war. Now, in the article, he just says the government did it. They didn't quote him all. So I call him up, and I keep calling, finally he answers. Just like some of these other people that hear their speakers, who I call them, Bud, come on the show, and I'm like, hey, Colonel, I'd sure like to have it on the radio. And he's like, yes, it's really bad. They were at the base, and we trained them, and they're government agents. This is absolutely horrible. My God, I can't believe this country. All of a sudden, what are you doing? Get off the phone. They told you. They told you. I got to go. Dial tone. I've talked to New York firefighters that's like that. I've heard firefighters, their wives screaming, they threaten the children. What the? I mean, that's the country we live in. Hey, Colonel, come on the radio show. Blah. I mean, you know, because this is blah. This is bad stuff. This isn't a joke. We got murdering killers running our government, and they're going to do it again. And we got to stop them. They're arrogant, they reach too far, and they're going to fail. I hope to God they don't do something bigger. I hope they don't do anything. But if they do, they just seal the final nail in their coffin. So go ahead, you arrogant, inbred trash. You country club wannabes. You pieces of filth. Bring it on, as your leader says. Because we're going to expose you and we're going to defeat you. Bombs in the building. Stephen Jones coming up here in about 30 minutes. He'll get into that in great detail. Professor Stephen Jones, BYU physics professor. Dr. Jones. Call my dad that. I have to start calling him Dr. Jones. Bombs in the buildings. I mean, give me a break. Modern steel buildings never fell from fires. Silverstein slipped up and said they pulled it, they blew it, demolition term. It's reported by hundreds of firefighters, police, there were bombs in the buildings. We got the recordings. It's unbelievable. And then you look at these squibs, you look at the blast points. The evidence is overwhelming. I mean, look at this photo. I don't know if you can see it on the screen, but right there in the middle of the building is a blast point. There's one down here. There's one right here. And you talk to firefighters and others, they were all blown in one floor or two floor pieces, perfectly blasted. You look at photos of them, they're sheared off like they were sliced by a butter knife and they were butter. There's one photo of it. There's one of the areas detailed for you. And then we have the Pentagon controversy. And I'm not going to spend a lot of time on the Pentagon controversy. It's as if it was tailor-made to get the bees to come to the honeypot. Get the bear to come to the honeypot, whatever analogy you wish. Pick it. I see a 16-foot hole. I see him grabbing surveillance camera tapes. I see all the things that have happened. It's very suspicious, but I've never made a film about it, even though I know it'd be popular. And I think it's good to investigate it. I'm not criticizing those that have. But then I've been criticized for just people always ask, why won't you talk about it? I go, I see their signature. I see their MO. Whether no plane hit or a plane did, the point is I meant to talk about this by these people, and I don't give them what they want. I just don't give them what they want. And the media from day one has always been happy to give attention to no plane hitting the Pentagon. And they like to give attention to other people that say planes didn't hit the towers. And I really don't see any evidence of that. Planes certainly did from what I've seen, but we're all allowed to have our own opinions. Fine. I'm not part of some orthodoxy as some grand poobah trying to tell people what to say. Thank you. I don't pretend to know what people should cover or what they should do. I think this free debate, this collegiate, university-style discussion as an American people looking and researching this is the answer. But I just challenge people to talk as much as you do about the Pentagon, about, and I ought to go out to California, I ought to stake out this colonel's house. I ought to get an interview with him about training these hijackers. I mean, we ought to demand this. And of course, they were trained other places too, Pensacola, and that was in the news. We need to focus on the things that are incontrovertible, and we need to focus on the entire spectrum of them. That's all I'm asking for. It's like going to the restaurant and ordering the one thing you've ordered, and then always ordering that same thing. I'm saying shake it up a little bit. If you go out to the public, you look at the full spectrum, even if we're wrong about 2 or 3 things, which in most cases we're not, it doesn't matter. The total sum evidence is there, especially in the history of government-sponsored terrorism. And then we judge a tree by its fruits. We judge a tree by its fruits. And Bush is just a high-level middle manager in this system. And he's actually been picked to look demonic, to look like a sniveling creature. He doesn't even know this. The entire administration has been chosen by the elite to actually demonize America as part of a larger global plan in the future. We're meant to fall. We're going into the American Union right now. That's Bush's amnesty plan. And we're not meant to see the big picture on this. But if you can't educate people about 9/11, and they're not ready for that yet, what about all the other things? Bush saying that he is above the law. And one of the big examples of that is torture. And Alberto Gonzales, earlier today in the press conference, I said these guys are murderers. And they are. Donald Rumsfeld's a murderer. George Bush is a murderer. I said that in my first film, Road to Tyranny. I mean, when you write memos and the president signs off on it saying, we could torture people, and if they die, it's okay. And then they torture people to death. In fact, in a court of law, you're more guilty in giving the order in precedent than the person that actually carried it out. But when their goons are stupid enough to take pictures of it, they just court-martial them and put them in jail for a year. They'll probably get some big corporate promotion after that, after they spent time in the Hilton. And then you got this creature. If you think Gonzales saying we can put people on tables and we can dunk them down and start drowning them, or we can rip their toenails out, that's pretty bad. And again, it shows their disconnect. Shows their disconnect. They've been getting along with it so long. It's like Marie Antoinette, let them eat cake. It's not really a true story, but it's a good example. They're up there saying, let them eat cake. We're at the gates of the Bastille going, we don't like what you're doing. They're like, oh, we're torturing. This guy, John Yoo right here, been in mainstream newspapers, that the man on your screen, and in the memo's public, got it in my new film Terror Storm coming out, said, look, the president is the law, the Führer principle, the leader principle that they have invoked. And he says, we're allowed to torture people whoever we want, however we want, and we can even torture innocent third parties, bystanders, including children, including small children. And he gave the example, we can put pliers on a 5-year-old's genitalia and crush them. I can't believe, again, pinch me. Right now, I don't even know this is insane. I mean, is this real? They write memos, they give the Pentagon saying we can torture little kids. Who are these people? And then I'm bad for saying they're scum. I'm bad. There's something wrong with me because I'm not afraid of these people. And because I'm going to fight them and I'm going to call them what they are. Low-down, murdering, dirty dogs. I want to see them brought to justice. And if you want to bring these people to justice before they totally dominate you and your family, you're going to have to totally get over your fear. When your fear is gone, you're going to have the true, dynamic, human spirit driving you, and you will be unstoppable. Pieces of trash that are on your screen. Let me tell you something. Joseph Mengele had more class than these people, and I hate Joseph Mengele. No, I'm serious. You know what he did? They'd take little kids and put them in hyperbaric chambers to test with their pilots till their eyeballs popped out. They'd take twins and sew them together. They'd tie women's legs together when they were delivering. It just all kind of, It's admitted, that his own officers admitted, Joseph Mengele, every few weeks when he was stressed out, he'd load up his big Mercedes, and they'd drive down the road, and they'd line up. He'd give them chocolates. They get 5 or 6 little kids lined up, normally little Jewish kids, give them a bunch of chocolates. I know I shouldn't call Joseph Mengele a criminal. And they would sit there, and he'd let them eat the chocolates, and he'd stand forward with a Luger and blow their little heads off. Just right down the line. He liked it. And let me tell you something. The people on your screen, they like it too. They like it too. And he was at a CFR meeting in Chicago a few months ago. John Yoo, and one of the CFR members said, hey, this is your memo. You said this. We played the recording. I've interviewed the professor. And John Yoo goes, yeah, I said it. We're allowed to do it. Joseph Mengele knew to hide it. The Nazis kept it secret that they were scumbag lovers of death. Pieces of absolute crap. These people are psychopathic predators. They're like mad dogs. They've got to be dealt with. They've got to be met head on. They've got to be met head on every time. And they're the same throughout history. Nero, Caligula, the Aztecs, they all did the same type stuff. Normal people, they get enough, they're happy. Sickos want more power. When they get total power, they just start killing people because everything's worn out, everything's old. All they get off on is the next great thing. And I guess the only good news in this history is these elitists finally kill a bunch of innocent, then they start committing suicide. That's the only new thing they can do that's radical. Oh, here, I'll just, slit my wrist. Okay. Again, that's the good news. They self-destruct. The problem in history is they try to get us to self-destruct with them. No, I don't want to self-destruct with you, you loser. I'm happy walking through the woods with my family and my dogs, and I'm happy with life, and I'm satisfied. I'm fulfilled because I'm normal. I'm happy with a big plate of enchiladas. I don't need to blow little Jewish kids' heads off, okay? I think that's sick, you freaks. And I think John Yoo and Alberto Gonzalez are the scum of the earth. And I'm not afraid of them. I don't care what they do to me. And when you understand this, you'll be totally free. I owe everything I am. My ancestors weren't perfect, but they stood up for what was right, and they weren't slaves. And all of us throughout our histories have been slaves at one point over time. Our forefathers stood up, whether you're black or white. You stood up, you fought slavery, and now you face another type of slavery. And man, I'm not afraid of anything because I realize I live on in this species. I think about people 1,000 years from now living all over the stars, the things they're going to have, the things they're going to enjoy, the dreams they're going to have, the things they're going to create. I just want to give them that like my forefathers gave it to me. That's all I want to transmit forward. It's not radical, it's not brave, it's nothing. When you finally learn what it is to be a human, it is empowering like nothing you'll ever know. And you know that feeling. That's why you're here tonight. You know a threat to you. You know a threat to this species. These people are a threat. They are a subgroup. They are parasites. And they are dominating us. It's like a cancer in the body. If you look at social Darwinism, they believe because they're ruthless and vicious and hateful and evil. They believe it somehow because they're ruthless. They revel. They try to top each other. Because it's a big joke around the country club for John Yoo and Gonzalez. Oh, Alberto, I'll top you. I say we torture small children. I'll say it publicly. Oh, well, quite nice. There is no doubting the fact that we must resent and we must resist these people who are just the darkest souls that you could ever imagine. And we must fight against them. We must prevail. We must defeat them. And I know this. I see fear in their eyes now. They've always been afraid of free, dynamic human societies. And I'm telling you, they're destined to lose. The question is, how many of us are they going to take with them? Yeah. Propaganda as the news. This is in the above the law section. I'll be wrapping up here in about 10 minutes. Propaganda as news. We've always known since Operation Mockingbird. What's a mockingbird do? It hears the sound, it repeats it. That's a well-named thing. Most news isn't CIA, just the top stuff is. And then others who think it's successful to repeat it, parrot it. Or like a Texas state bird, they mock it. They repeat it ad nauseum. They quack it. And we're looking at 1.6 billion we know about in the last 2 years spent on fake news and buying reporters. And the Congressional Budget Office, the General Accounting Office, they all said, here's a whole bunch of federal laws. Every count of this is a felony. There's thousands of them. Thousands. I mean, and the news, when it broke, had to cover just one case. Okay, Armstrong Williams, he took $240,000 to pass Head Start, to promote it, to say he was for it. That's 240-something thousand out of $1.6 billion. $1.6 billion in fake news. They tell us Iraq's got democracy, they've got freedom. Turns out all their papers, if you write something that criticizes the government, you get 30 years in prison or killed. Sometimes with your family. I mean, this is the freedom, and domestically, this fake news is going on. So be aware of it. You can always spot it like a $3 bill. It's like the story with Iran. Those Iranians are now going to make Christians, Zoroastrians, and Jews wear special tags. And it turns out it was all a lie. Same thing with the baby with the incubators. You can learn to spot these news stories. When Sean Hannity gets up and says, I think every child needs a microchip, folks, there's probably some cash going around. I'm just guessing there.
He's retarded.
Yeah. So, NSA spying. None of this stuff's secret. I read industry publications in '96. Many of my listeners have been hearing it for that many years, where they said they passed a federal law to put in the $9 billion of control grids. And I've been saying for years, every major phone company has an NSA office in it. What did you hear about San Francisco and the rest of the country a month ago? Not that I had some crystal ball. The industry publication reported they paid to put it in. It's like USA Today. You all got free if you're staying here at the hotel today. It says, oh, guess what? Your cell phone, a new service, can track you down to a few feet. That was passed in '96, became law October 1st, 2001, and passed as law that the regulation be implemented by 2001 to be clear. And all of this is happening. All of this is going on. And it doesn't intimidate me. It shows they're scared, like the eye of Sauron trying to look down from Mount Doom to see what we're doing. It's a panic control mechanism. I don't care if you watch me. I don't care if you track me. There's more of us, tens of thousands to one, to every one of you. My conclusion, put simply, is the people are waking up. I've got a bunch of different polls here in front of me, but I just want to go over what these polls actually say. The latest Zogby poll, commissioned by 911truth.org, great folks, says, do you think the government's covering up, and do you think they could be involved? If I commissioned a poll, I would certainly want to tell you that, but that's the exciting news. They asked people, do you think the government's involved? And half of them said, yeah, we think they're involved. So that's exciting. That's a major round of applause for the American people waking up at 9/11 Truth putting that on. They had Zogby polls a few years ago with 6 or 8%. In fact, I've got them right here. We'll just go to them. It's even better. Where they are showing this. We have unscientific polls, where I think people are actually answering honestly, where they're not scared. A poller calls you up and goes, think the government carried out 9/11? Most people are going to say no. You start getting half, that's amazing. Yes, 90%. That was Anderson Cooper. And here's another one. Again, 90% believes U.S. government cover-up on 9/11. That's from a few years ago. And then they have the newest Zogby poll, finds over 70 million voting-age Americans support new 9/11 investigation. And then it goes on to say the possibility of U.S. government role in the attacks. So there is the poll for you. 70 million voting-age Americans support a new investigation. There's great people here that are organizing that, and I think that is dynamic and extremely exciting, and I'm very proud to be part of it and proud to be associated with all you people here today. And then we have Charlie Sheen poll. And it actually closed. When they took it down, it was at like 86%, and then suddenly went down to 83 when they closed it. The screenshot we got is 82%. They had like 44,000 respondents on CNN in 3 days to this poll, and 83% when it closed. That says 82% were there, and believing Charlie Sheen that the government was involved. That's basically what the show asked to the people. And then there's many other polls out there along the similar lines. But don't hold your breath. And then, of course, there's the dangers of partisanship. Folks, it's like when you go to you're at work and they got two vending machines in the hall. And one's got this brand, PepsiCo brand, and one's got Coca-Cola brand. And the Republicans are Coca-Cola and the Democrats are Pepsi. And they all try to give you a different pitch and a different marketing plan, but they're all by the same people. The same vendor put them in. And you go, and the lobbyists go. They go and they put their money in the slot and they pull the thing for what they want. And so that's basically, they punch the button and what they ask for drops out of the slot. And that's the problem with this country today. And we just have to get honest about that and realize that the liberals think, big government will save us from the evil Republicans who don't want big government. No, actually, Republicans like bigger government than Democrats. It's corporate welfare, and they're creating a big state to take your wealth and give it to themselves to then enslave you. And then Republicans think all corporations are pure as a driven snow and everything they're doing is fine, and my God, we deserve to pay $3.50 a gallon for gas. And then you go read the oil refineries' own documents, the oil companies, and it says they've shut down the refineries on purpose to artificially depress it. There's the fact right there, their own documents, but the news will never cover it. And when you get right down to it, it's going to take courage. And I wanted to speak a few minutes as we close here on Charlie Sheen. I know a lot of Hollywood people, they're afraid to go public. I don't know why I know all these people. A lot of them have second homes in Austin. And over the years, I've gotten to know him. And Charlie's the only person who had the will and had the nerve, when I visited with him in private at his home, to go public. I didn't ask him to go public. But he did go public, and he knew exactly what would happen. And he's asked me not to tell you about it. A little bit of it's come out in some of the news, so I can tell you a little bit. But imagine getting actual phone calls. Listen up. Shut your mouth or bad stuff's going to come out in the press. I mean, this is the real deal. And the allegations are completely false. All of it's a lie. I mean, crazy stuff like, did Charlie Sheen murder a porn star? And actual news calls up Houston and they go, no. And her friends say, Charlie hasn't gone out with this girl in 10 years and she died of leukemia. Doesn't matter. National news, the murderer. Murdering. I mean, it's just unbelievable, the things that have been done and the things that have happened. So we need to stand up for people that have courage. A man who's been doing it for decades, like Webster Tarpley back there, or the other great speakers that are going to be here in the next 2 days. We need to stand up for great MI5 agents like David Shaler and Andy Michon. We need to defend these people and cherish them and thank them for not just talking, putting it all on the line, and in some cases going to prison for the truth. Because again, everything we are, our existence is owed, our freedom is owed to people that have sacrificed before us. And so it's to these individuals who've been on the front lines, who've been fighting the hardest, that I want to thank you from the bottom of my heart, and I want to say I commend you for what you've done. God bless you. What are the stakes? What are the stakes that we face? You've researched 9/11. I now challenge you to research something that's even bigger, and that 9/11 is only a tiny part of. And that is the human population control and extermination agenda. Remember a few months ago, Dr. Pianka, UT, says we need to kill 90% of people. Oh, it'd be great if Ebola was released. We have the minutes of his speech. Then they try to spin it. It's not just him. It's so many others. This is the agenda. The elite says we can kill 3,000 of these people. This is our plan to save the earth. And they've hijacked environmentalism. They fund a lot of the phony environmental groups. We have real environmental crises, the DU, the genetic engineering. That's all real. But all the big environmental groups are busy stealing farms and ranches. They're not out there dealing with the real crisis. Diabetes has gone from 1 in 45 50 years ago to 1 in 3 now. And I've interviewed Nobel Prize winners, genetic experts. They say it's not the corn syrup. That's part of it. It's the genetic engineered foods. They cause the body to go haywire. Rats die of diabetes every time you feed them this stuff. And most of us are eating it. It's already in most products. These are the type of issues. Why would they use the equivalent of 44,000 A-bombs in Iraq in the last 2 wars? That's the equivalent Hiroshima-style bombs. It's blowing around in our atmosphere. Nuclear detectors, radiation detectors, picking them up in the U.S. and England. This is happening. This is going on. This is the reality. These people are crazy. They love death. If we tell the people the truth, if we get out there, if we expose this, if we resist this tyranny, we shall prevail. And we don't have a choice, so we might as well live on our feet and fight on our feet than to get on our knees and die as slaves. We ought to go out swinging all the way. And in my final close, before Professor Dr. Stephen Jones gets up here and gets into controlled demolition with an amazing presentation I've seen on videotape, I can't wait to scurry out there and do interviews and scurry back in to see it live. I've got my own huge 9/11 symposium coming up in Los Angeles, June 24th and 25th. Ray McGovern's going to be there, the CIA analyst. We're going to have Professor Stephen Jones there. We're going to have Webster Tarpley. We're going to have Professor Jim Fetzer. We're going to have surprise guests. You can probably imagine who the people who have courage are. They're going to be there. And so many others that William Rodriguez, one of the 9/11 survivors, one of the heroes. It's going to be amazing. Again, it's great being here with you. God bless you all. We shall prevail. The human spirit shall defeat the New World Order.